His Lieutenant Governor, Roger Roth, will be with us today. Our next state treasurer, someone who actually knows how to count, John Lieber, will be with us today. We'll hear about Senate races from Robert Ralph, who's running for state Senate. We'll hear about the 2nd congressional seat from our candidate there, Eric Olson. And to close off the event, just in the last 24 hours, Governor Tommy Thompson will be joining us to help close the event at the end of the day. And with him, as everyone in here knows, he always finds the candy bar in the car. You know, he always comes up full of energy and full of inspiration. So we're super excited to have him here. Now, being state chair of the party, this is a big state. Almost 6 million people, 72 counties, a lot of real estate. And I've been spending a fair bit of time on the road myself the last several weeks. But this is a big, big state to cover. And so when you have a chair of the party, of the state party, who has to help recruit candidates and raise money and go around and speak at hundreds of events while they're chair and do all the responsibilities that come with being the state chair of the party, that is a big, big job for whoever holds it. And when our former state chair, Andrew had to step aside, I'm just telling you, we really needed somebody good to step up and provide the leadership that we needed, right, after 2018 and 2020, going into this year when the Senate's on the line, when the governorship is on the line, when the legislature is on the line, a lot is on the line, and the right person stepped up. Please join me in welcoming the state chairman, Paul Farrow.
Got it? All right. How you guys doing? Isn't it a great day to be a Republican? All right, so I got to get this out of the way because everybody's been laughing at me lately. Just so you guys understand, we have 58 days, 21 hours, 32 minutes, and 40 seconds before the polls open on November 8th. That's the time we have to make a difference. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about today, this morning. Good Lord. Time travel, it's fun. We have a chance to take our state back. We've seen what's happened the last 3.5 years. We've seen what's happened the last 2 years under this president. It's time to get back to normal. It's time to take our state and our country back and give it back to the people where it belongs. Don't you agree? We got great news. I know Brian was just talking about absentee ballots are going to be going out. I believe it's about September 22nd. We just got great news from a wonderful judge in Waukesha County, gotta love him, that says, you know what, clerks, you can't cure the absentee ballot envelopes. The people have to fill them out. All we're asking is you to follow state law. It says it clearly in state law, this is what you have to do. That's what we want to get. We want to get people to understand that the rule of law is what's important. That's what the basis of our society is on. You don't get to make it up. You don't get to decide what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And we need individuals. Our Attorney General, Eric Toney instead of Josh Kaul. Our Governor, Tim Michels instead of Tony Evers. Getting Ron Johnson back to the U.S. Senate to hold the line for us. Putting Amy Loudenbeck in as our Secretary of State. John Lieber as our Treasurer. These are the people we need to make a change. But you know what? All of that can't be done without you. And that's what I want to say to this morning is thank you. You make the difference. This party isn't a party of paid union poll workers or door knockers like the Democrats are. This is a party of volunteers, of the grassroots individuals that feel that passion. And I'll take a whole army of volunteers every day over a paid group of individuals, because you know what's at stake. It's your families. Some of us, pretty excited, going to be a grandpa, first time, about November 12th. So this election is really important to me. But we can make that difference. Every single day that you are out there knocking on the doors, talking to people, making phone calls, getting signs up, gets us one step closer to being normal back again, to bringing that normalcy back to Wisconsin. And I can't thank you all enough for that. This is what it really comes down to. You know how important elections are? You know how important you are in elections? Let's look back at the spring cycle. We turned 870 some seats from liberal mindset to conservative across the state. 5 new county executives, conservative. In La Crosse County, we added, I believe it was 8 seats to the county board. Didn't get the majority. It's a 15-13 balance right now. The Liberals have 15 seats, we have 13. But you know how important that change was? 8 new seats? They had 2 referenda that came up that they were going to put on the November ballot. One was legalizing marijuana, which is kind of interesting because they already had that in 2020 and everybody said, yeah, we want to legalize marijuana. But I guess we just got to be sure, so we're going to do it again. It's not that we want to get people out to vote. We really want to make sure this is what it is. The second one was on abortion. They wanted to put a referendum on the ballot about abortion so they can pull people out. 13 conservative voices helped to get 3 or 4 others to come to their side, and both of them failed. That's the power that you have in making a difference. 58 days, 21 hours, now 28 minutes. I'm talking too long. That's how much time I need from you. Get out and talk. Get out and connect with people. How many of you, and this is a real fun question, how many of you ever had someone call you up about a week before the election, say, hey, who am I supposed to vote for? You're the influencers. Get out there and talk about it. Talk about what Tim's doing. He is running around the state right now and he is making an incredible change. How's it going to be to have a business person who actually hires and fires and has a staff of 8,000 that work for him? 3rd largest construction company in the country. To have a business mindset come into Wisconsin and say, you know what? $42 billion budget, really? 71,000 employees? I think we could be more effective. Right? Bringing that mindset in. Senator Johnson, we know what Ron does. Day in and day out, he takes that fight to D.C. to try to hold the line. We've seen the spending just go out the window. The president, the governor, grabbed your checkbooks and said, look what we can do. I can write all these checks. I'm just going to keep writing your money away and the taxes that you spend. Well, we'll figure about it at the other end. Maybe we should have Dave Ramsey teach them how to do balance their budget. That's what we've got to get back to. The only way we do it is with your help. I need you guys to step up and be the warriors that I know you are. The second, Wisconsin, the country depend on you. I know you guys can do it. And I'm asking for your help. 58 days. We can do this. We can get it done. If anybody's like you guys are probably drinking coffee. I'm a drinking Mountain Dew guy. I can throw a whole case of Mountain Dew in the back of the truck and I'm ready to go. We will keep rolling. We will get this done. The goal is to sweep Wisconsin. Bring it back red hard and bring back the normalcy we need and require to make sure that we have a state that's going to be effective for generations to come. God bless you all for being here today. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
So, 9 times in this century, we have had statewide races decided by less than 30,000 votes. 9 times with 6 million people in this state. George Bush Jr., W., both times, 2000, 2004. Donald Trump, both times, 2016, 2020. Scott Walker lost by a switch of 15,000 votes. Attorney General Brad Schimmel lost by a switch of 10. We had 3 Supreme Court races where there was an identified conservative and an identified liberal within 10,000 votes. That close. So what that does is speak to the importance of what we do, right? So we have races coming on next year. I mean, one of the interesting things about this is the whole country is watching Wisconsin. Does everyone remember when we were called flyover country? Remember those days? They called us flyover country. Them days are gone. Those days are gone. So when you look ahead to this November 8th, 59 days off, we have a couple of big statewide races. And one of them is because 4 years ago, we ended up with the most partisan attorney general in Josh Kaul that this state has ever seen. Ever seen. You hear it from law enforcement people all the time. You hear it from people around the state. We see the effects of it, right, in violent crime in Milwaukee, in people getting out of prison early, like the Waukesha parade suspect, by the way. But that's just one example. There are a lot more. And if you're going to be a strong law enforcement state, it needs to start at the top with the Attorney General's office, which is why we are so lucky this year to have a person who is on the front lines of law enforcement in this state. Honestly, I can't tell you how many law enforcement folks I've talked to as I traveled the state that say so much about this next guy, right now the candidate, but in 60 days, if we all do what we're here to do, he in January will be sworn in as the next Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin. Please welcome Eric Toney.
Thank you. Well, thank you. That's very, very kind reception by all of you, and I joke I'd love to bring Brian Schimming with me everywhere I go for the beautiful introductions he always does. So let's give Brian a round of applause as well. You know, there's a lot of familiar faces out there, but some of you that I haven't had a chance to meet, and so I always like to tell people why I really made that decision to run for Attorney General. And how many of you remember the Jacob Blake shooting in Kenosha just over 2 years ago when Tony Evers condemned and convicted a police officer with no facts? And who remembers what our Attorney General did that night? Who said nothing? You get 5,000 points and a yard sign before you leave. They're free anyways, but that's true. Josh Kaul did nothing that night. And from talking with Kenosha police officers, they knew Jacob Blake was armed with a knife that night. DCI knew Jacob Blake was armed with a knife. And guess who else had to have known Jacob Blake was armed with a knife? Josh Kaul, because he was leading that investigation. And if he didn't know Jacob Blake was armed with a knife, he was asleep at the wheel. And I have done officer-involved death investigations in the worst possible circumstances when Trevor Casper, a 21-year-old state trooper, gave his life in our community to keep others safe, ending a threat that had murdered someone else that day. I know how complex they are, I know how difficult they are, and I know how much time they can take. And what Josh Kaul should have done is said, what the governor just told you is not true, there are more facts, we will protect the integrity of the investigation and remain calm. Instead, he did what? Nothing. And what we need to start having people ask is, what did Josh Kaul know and when, and why did he refuse to push back against the governor's statement? And I hope that people will start asking those questions and hold him accountable. But this is why I'm in the race, because it's not just that he did nothing that night, he did worse than nothing in the aftermath. He effectively turned his back on our cops. And that's personal to me. My dad spent over 30 years as a police officer. I know what it's like growing up as a kid to worry about his safety when he'd get a page out on a SWAT call. But I know what it's like to not know if my dad's alive. On March 20th, 2011, Officer Craig Burkholz gave his life trying to aid a fellow police officer that was shot in Fond du Lac. And when that shooting happened, my dad was working, and I couldn't get a hold of him. And I didn't know if my dad was alive. Praying for the best, understanding that another family might never get to say, "I love you." Where I still get to say that to my dad, Craig's family and Trevor's family never gets that opportunity again. And their sacrifices are emblematic of what our law enforcement will do for anyone here in Wisconsin to keep us safe, and they have earned our support, they have earned our respect, and they have earned the right to have an attorney general that will stand with them, and with your help, we are going to do that in November. Because as Josh Kaul turned his back on our cops, they have flipped the page on him, and I am proud to be law enforcement's choice for Attorney General with over 100 sheriffs, police chiefs, and DAs from across Wisconsin that have endorsed me. And the Wisconsin Fraternal Order of Police unanimously endorsed me, the Milwaukee Police Association, the Milwaukee Police Supervisors Organization, the Racine Police Association, law enforcement from across Wisconsin. And here's the kicker: bipartisan support from Republican and Democrat sheriffs and district attorneys that have seen the failures of Josh Kaul. And let's talk about those failures for a moment, because we have seen unprecedented violence and a drug epidemic with fentanyl killing kids in our communities at a record rate and destroying families. And Josh Kaul's response to this, some people talk about defunding the police. Josh Kaul has actually done it at our Department of Justice, leaving key DCI agent positions unfilled to the tune of about 18%, 88 out of 113 of those positions are filled. And that number comes from the director of DCI, Tina Virgil, at a Badger State Sheriff's Conference earlier this year. During unprecedented violence, he's reduced the resources to law enforcement across Wisconsin. But it gets worse. Prosecutors. Josh Kaul has defunded prosecutor positions at our Department of Justice, leaving key frontline prosecutor positions at DOJ unfilled by over 20%, making it more difficult for district attorneys like me. I'm in my 10th year as the elected DA of Fond du Lac County and serve as the president of our Wisconsin District Attorneys Association, a bipartisan group that advocates for public safety and prosecutor issues across Wisconsin. But he defunded those positions, balancing his budget at the expense of public safety. But it gets worse. Maybe you didn't think it could, but it does. Our crime labs. If you remember when he ran, that was his #1 campaign promise back in 2018. And during this unprecedented violence and drugs, in comparison to Brad Schimmel, Josh Kaul is taking in thousands of less items, he's testing thousands of less items, and he's taking longer to do it in many categories, including DNA. And when I gave that statement, it was in response to his crime lab report that he tried to bury over Easter weekend this year, trying to hide it from all of us. And PolitiFact called, and they challenged that statement. And after we gave them all the facts and all the data, they rated it 100% true. And what I hope we'll see is the media start writing some stories on this like they did when Brad Schimmel was running for re-election, to hold Josh Kaul accountable just like they ran those stories back in 2018. Because I've used just about every resource you can think of from our Department of Justice as a district attorney, where I've had the misfortune of prosecuting every type of case you can think of: cold case homicide, racketeering, sexual assault, domestic violence, drunk driving, complex drug conspiracies, overdoses. My first jury trial was a speeding ticket. Nothing is too small or too big, and our law enforcement needs a partner at our Department of Justice to help deploy those resources and keep our community safe. And that's why I said we need to improve our cash bail system to force judges to consider the dangerousness of defendants when setting bail to prevent things like that Waukesha Parade massacre from ever happening again. And when I said that, it was before the massacre. I was advocating for that constitutional amendment that Brad Schimmel was trying to help get across the finish line in 2017. And you know who didn't support that? Josh Kaul. Josh Kaul actually supports eliminating cash bail until maybe he doesn't. Because this past week, when I held a press conference in Milwaukee to address the violence and the shooting that hit Water Street, Josh Kaul then said he supports these Republican efforts to improve cash bail when he doubled and tripled down on eliminating cash bail just like Mandela Barnes. He's playing politics with these issues because he's never personally prosecuted a case here in Wisconsin as a frontline prosecutor and used those resources. And now he's changing his tune. And I've also argued that we need to give our Attorney General original prosecution authority for Milwaukee County. And now, Josh Kaul is adopting that, but saying he wants to do it for all of Wisconsin. But we need to protect Milwaukee, because if we protect Milwaukee, we protect all of Wisconsin, because that crime bleeds across our state. And I refuse to accept that as the new normal, just like I know all of you refuse to accept that as the new normal here in Wisconsin. Now, make no mistake, public safety is on the ballot in November, and we have an Attorney General who gives lip service to it. And if that is not your number one priority, you have no business running for Attorney General. And I have and will make that my top priority, like I have done for nearly a decade as a district attorney in Fond du Lac County, where I am proud to have the endorsements of every single police chief and my sheriff in Fond du Lac County, because they have seen the work that my office, not just me, but my amazing prosecutors, our support staff, and the teamwork that we have with our law enforcement across Fond du Lac County. And that is what I want to take to our Department of Justice to help spread across Wisconsin and work with our amazing prosecutors, which I want to talk about for a moment. Does anybody know how much an assistant district attorney makes starting out? It's about $54,000 after 7 years of schooling. We cannot find people to take these jobs right now because they will make tens of thousands of dollars more if they work in a corporation counsel's office, a city attorney's office, or in the private sector. And when we see that horrific violence happen and that great work that our law enforcement does, we need those outstanding prosecutors on the back end fighting for justice in our courtrooms day in and day out, and we need to make sure that they're paid so we can attract people that want that job, not that that's the job they can get. And I am working with our Republican legislature to try to make that happen, and I hope you will help advocate for that as well, so we can have the best and brightest working side by side with our law enforcement, because I am beyond honored to be the Republican nominee, and winning that primary on August 9th was not the most important thing I did that week. Does anybody know the name Philip Thiessen? I don't see any hands in the air. Well, Philip was a United States Marine. He was a Fairfax, Virginia police officer. And he was a DCI agent for our Wisconsin Department of Justice until he retired. And he volunteered at the Fond du Lac Food Pantry after retirement. Philip was a dad. He was murdered in Fond du Lac County. He was riding a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and the person that killed him had major mental health issues, but he said he wanted to kill a white person because of Donald Trump, the political rhetoric, and the silent majority. And so he intentionally plowed his pickup truck into Philip, killing him, stealing him from his family and our community. But you didn't hear about that because it didn't fit the narrative. But that's what I was doing that week, fighting for justice for Philip's family and all of those colleagues across the country that he worked with. And that's what I will do as your Attorney General, because I have had people threaten to kill me, threaten to cut my head off, shave my eyebrows, and mail it to the media. I don't know what they had against my eyebrows. I kind of like them. But I have not backed down in fighting for justice for victims in the courtroom. I will not back down in standing up for our law enforcement, and I will not back down in fighting for you to keep our community safe as our Attorney General. And I'm a little tired because I've hit 65 counties. A couple days ago, I got home at 1:45 in the morning from being in Burnett County, and I plan to hit all 72 before this is over. I am not going to stop and wake up on November 9th.
But because he's honest with himself. And integrity means everything to this guy. So when he can be honest with himself, he's honest with us too. America is watching this one. Everyone seen all the anti-Ron Johnson ads, all the third-party anti-Ron Johnson ads? Everyone seen that? $65 million. Not in opposition candidates, in third-party money. $65 million has poured into Wisconsin from across leftist groups and individuals from Hollywood clear to the other coast to get rid of this guy because he speaks the truth and they don't like it. And so he is the number one for both sides, for them and for us. It's our number one job to send this guy back to the U.S. Senate. Now, today's a busy day for this guy. He's got 5 or 6 events, and he came from Oshkosh to be here in the Dells, has to go back to do events in the Fox Valley, and then drives to La Crosse after that, and then back to the Fox Valley tonight. And he drives himself. Ron Johnson drives himself all over the place. So he really wanted to be here today, and so he put this into his schedule to thank you, but also to remind us all we got 59 days left to save America. And the number one job for us in Wisconsin in 59 days to save America is to re-elect Ron Johnson. Please welcome United States Senator Ron Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. So first of all, I want to thank Kim and John and Brian, and thank all of you for coming here today. Let me start. I actually got 30 minutes, which is, for me, a long time when I'm not doing Q&A, and it's really not a very good venue for Q&A. So I'll fill it up. But let me start with the story. I've been telling this on different events, but I want to start here because I think it's an important point to make. Now, I don't know how you folks communicate with your family members, but I use texts. So I got text chains with my kids and with my brothers and sisters. We call that text chain siblings, real imaginative. But we're all politically engaged. We love finding a good video or a good article that we can share, and then we can talk about it via text. Well, about 3 or 4 months ago, I just got a single piece of paper. And it came from my cousins who were going through their parents who had passed their belongings. And the piece of paper is dated January 1934. Now, a little backstory here. My father lost his father at the age of 3 in January of 1934 in a little town in southern Minnesota called Mapleton, Minnesota, farming town. During the depth of the Depression, during the depth of winter. But again, because my dad was so young, he just doesn't remember anything about his father, except he remembers when his dad died. He remembers his mom going from farm to farm, trying to collect enough money to bury her husband and get through the winter with her 4 children. He remembers the casket in his living room. He remembers some candles around it. That's it. That's all my dad knows about his dad. Now that piece of paper, it was just a list of names with a donation amount. It doesn't really look like it's something my grandma kept. It looks like more like a piece of paper that somebody might have put in the local town hall or something to also pick up a collection. The biggest donation was $2. There were 2 $1 donations. There were a couple for 50 cents. Most of them were quarters. Had a couple dimes, even had a couple nickels. So, of course, the accountant in me immediately gets out the 10 key and totals it up. $12.25. The public policy guy in me goes, I wonder what that's worth today. The answer is $320. So you see how much we devalued our currency in less than 100 years. But again, can you think of trying to get through the winter in the depth of depression on $320 today? Kind of gives you an appreciation with what our forefathers had to deal with, you know. There wasn't quite the land of plenty that we enjoy today. Okay, now why am I telling the story? Because to me, that story just epitomizes what America is and who Americans are. I mean, isn't it true in the midst of any tragedy, we come together and we help out, whether it's a personal tragedy like my grandma and her 4 children experienced in Mapleton, Minnesota in 1934, or regional tragedies, let's say Florida hurricanes, or in the Midwest here, floods or tornadoes, or out west, wildfires or earthquakes. I mean, don't we come together and we send truckloads full of construction material, truckloads full of construction workers to help our fellow citizens rebuild? After 9/11, 3,000 of our fellow citizens slaughtered. The anniversary is tomorrow. We saw the iconic pictures of the firefighters and law enforcement walking into danger. In the midst of that tragedy, we saw the absolute best of America. We came together. It made us strong. I was on the platform when President Biden gave his inaugural address when he took his oath of office. 8 times during that address, he said his number 1 goal, not number 2, not number 3, not number 12, number 1 goal was unify and heal this nation. I fortunately wasn't able to watch his speech. I've listened to segments. Can't really bring myself to listen to his divisive speech. Now, not the commander-in-chief, the divider-in-chief. And can we be honest? And I wish our media would be honest about this as well. It's not us that are seeking to divide this nation. It's the left. It's always been the left. Now, I remember President Obama, 5 days before he was elected, he said, in 5 days, we're going to have the opportunity to fundamentally transform America. President Biden, as a candidate, parroted those exact same words. I asked the question, do you even like, much less love, something you want to fundamentally transform? Seriously. So I got to wake up in the morning, the analogy I use, I wake up, look at my wife, Jane, I love you, and I'm going to change everything about you. You need real fundamental transformation. Of course you don't. But unfortunately, now we're seeing what they mean by fundamental transformation. It's 40-year high inflation, out of control deficit spending, sparking that inflation. Do you realize $1 that you held at the start of the Biden administration is only worth 88.3 cents? It's crushing everybody, but you know who's really crushing seniors on a fixed income, right? Record gasoline price, I know they come down a little bit, but nationally 60% higher than they were. In Wisconsin, almost double where they were. Rising crime, we got record murders in Milwaukee because of some of these loony policies like my opponent would support, letting criminals out without bail. Defund the police. Our open border. You know, I had Mark Morgan, I had Brandon Judd, the head of the, Mark Morgan was head of CBP under both Obama and Trump. Brandon Judd head of the Border Patrol Union. They came up for an event a couple of weeks ago. We collectively, because DHS has not published these figures, we collectively just calculated how many people have been encountered, processed, and dispersed into America. How many known and unknown gotaways? Combined, it's about 3 million people since the start of this administration. 3 million coming in this country. Put that in perspective, that's a number larger than the population of 17 states. How Wisconsin is feeling this open border, though, is primarily in the deadly drugs. You know, a lot of these counterfeit pills. Some of them, I've heard, you know, it used to be about 1 in 10 had enough fentanyl to kill you. I got briefed 4 in 10. I heard local sheriffs say it's about 7 in 10. And 1 pill can kill. That's the result of President Biden's open border policy, the Democrat open border policy. It's killing our children. It's killing our citizens. Every state's a border state because of those deadly drugs. Here we are in the year 2022 in America. We don't have enough infant formula to feed our babies in America. The embarrassing and dangerous surrender in Afghanistan. What do you think emboldened Putin to invade Ukraine and commit his atrocities and war crimes? So I call that the list of horribles. How about the indoctrination of our children in schools? What about biological males competing with their girls, then expecting to shower in their locker rooms? This is what fundamental transformation in America looks like. I would argue it's called fundamentally destroying this country. They must be stopped. So let's talk about how we stop it, but let me first talk about what we're up against. It's not a level playing field. Not at all. I mean, you heard Brian talk about in my election, $65 million telling lies, distorting the truth, assassinating my character, engaging in politics and personal structure. That's all they have. I mean, the left can't defend their policies. They can't defend the disastrous results of their policies. So all they have are lies, distortions, and character assassination. That's all they got. They don't mind lying. They have no restraint about lying because the left, who are reading out of the playbook of Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals, identify a target and destroy that target. Any means will do because the end always justifies the means to the left. They want power. That's why they're so unified. They just want power. They crave it. They'll do anything for it. And we're witnessing what it looks like. So again, we've got the left, unrestrained, willing to tell any lie and use any means to gain that power. But that's almost the least of our worries. Because allied with the left is the media. Now, we have talk radio, we have some conservative outlets, but by and large, I mean, this is indisputable. The vast majority of the mainstream media have been educated at our journalism schools, at our universities that were taken over by the radical left in the 60s. A lot of them, I don't even realize this, they're really not journalists. They're advocates. They're leftists themselves, and they are advocates for the leftist cause. And so if you just notice, I'll just use a couple of examples. I know there was a PolitiFact check. Somebody said that Mandela Barnes was for defunding police. Now, he said everything, maybe we don't have him on camera saying he wants to defund the police, but he says he wants to reallocate resources away from them. That would be called defunding, okay? He's supported by the most radical groups who lead the effort to defund police. So somebody somewhere made the claim, got PolitiFact checked, that Mandela Barnes wants to defund police. So PolitiFact judged that mostly false. You know why? Because they went to Mandela Barnes and said, hey, Mandela, do you want to defund police? And Mandela said, no. Oh, okay. We'll take your word for it. You compare that to how they'll take what I say, which is 100% true, and somehow come up with some method of claiming that is pants on fire false. Okay? Again, it's not a level playing field. We need to understand that the radical left has infiltrated just about every institution in America, and that's what we're up against. So how do we combat that? How do we combat the lies, the distortions, the character assassination? Well, it's got to be we the people armed with the truth. Now, listen, I feel pretty good about the fact that if the truth can prevail, we win this running away. But it's hard to get the truth out. I would suggest, one of the ways I'm trying to get the truth out in my campaign is we've set up a website called wisfacts.com. WISFACTS. WISFacts. Go to it. And if you're hearing something, oh, is this true? No. If you're hearing from the press and sounds bad against me, it's not true. So go to WISFacts and download it. And let me just cover 3 of the areas, okay? Of many lies, probably the biggest one right now, they're saying that I want to cut or end or put in the chopping block Social Security. Nothing could be further from the truth. I want to save Social Security. I want to save Medicare. What I'm doing and why they're telling you these lies is I'm trying to point out the truth that the greatest threat to any government program is the massive deficit spending and the growing debt. You know, you have the vast majority of people in Washington, D.C., and quite honestly, the vast majority of Americans, because the mainstream media is not covering this, just whistling past the graveyard the fact that we're $30.8 trillion in debt, that we have trillion-dollar-plus deficits in the future as far as the eye can see. That if we just return to the interest rate, the average interest rate from the last 3 decades of the last century, 5.4%, pretty reasonable interest rate, really. That would add $1.2 trillion of interest expense annually to what we're trying to fund. This is clearly unsustainable. So again, for somebody like me having the courage to tell people the truth so we can avert a crisis, so we can save these programs, I get rewarded with those lies. So don't believe them. Please spread the word. No, we, me, all of us, we want to save Social Security and Medicare. So let's put that one aside. Next. Probably one of the greatest achievements or my accomplishments as U.S. Senator is during Republican tax reform, when we were only going to cut taxes for 5% of American corporations, the C-Corps. Because I have a private sector background, because I had an LLC, a subchapter S, I knew there were other business organizations other than C-Corps. I raised my hand and go, guys, hey, time out. You realize you're leaving 95% of American businesses behind. But unfortunately, they already passed the budget that only accommodated the tax cut for the big guys. So I had to dig my heels in. I had to buck my own party. I had to withstand the scorn of Wisconsin Talk Radio calling me just another grandstanding Republican senator. I had to take the snarly phone calls from the Oval Office. But I dug my heels in, and I made sure that 95% of American businesses, more than 20 million tax filers, got a tax cut, and many of them have come up to me and said, Senator, because of your tax cut, I was able to survive the pandemic. I'm proud of that. But what has happened now is the left, because they're happy to lie, they're happy to distort, said, No, I carved out a special tax deal for myself and a couple supporters. Again, 20 million, I guess, of my best friends also got that tax cut. Now, again, an honest media, they would do a fact check on those false ads. They don't do that. They know the truth, but they won't do it. Let me do the last one. A lot of attack ads saying I'm in this for myself. Do you guys think I'm in this for myself? I'm not, okay? But how, one of the things they infer I am is because I doubled my wealth. So let's examine that. I don't know of any other member of Congress, when they became a member of Congress, sold all their marketable securities and just turned them into cash. So there'd be no conflict. By the way, we know what a great investment cash is, right? What did I say? $1 you held at the start of the Biden administration is now worth 88.3 cents. Well, those dollars I held are now worth 88.3 cents, and that's just over the last 18, 19 months. So again, I did that so there'd be no conflict of interest. The only reason that my wealth increases all is I had my business. That was kicking off some income, and then I sold it. So my business went from book value to market value. Now, had I simply taken all my assets and put them in an ETF, a stock index fund at the start of my Senate career, I would have quadrupled my wealth. So I mean, that's the PolitiFact truth. That's what the media should be pointing out, countering those lies. I suppose the complaint is that I'm an awful investor. I'm not. I'm just a very high integrity U.S. Senator. So please spread that truth around. So now let me shift gears and for a little, because I got some time. Let me talk about my opponent. I finally have an opponent. Okay, I didn't have one. They obviously didn't tell the truth about each other. So Mandela Barnes became their nominee. By the way, he was just crowned their nominee. Did you find that odd? All of a sudden, here's a young man spent $12 million on his campaign, and 2 weeks before he just steps aside, and I guess the power broker said, no, we want the most radical leftist as our nominee for U.S. Senate. So that's what they got. So now that I have an opponent, we need to start defining him. So we'll talk about him a little bit. Mandela Barnes, for whatever reason, thinks the founding of America was awful. I think it's one of the crowning achievements of self-governance. I love this country. I think it's a marvel in human history. Mandela Barnes thinks it's awful. He also, this is really boggles your mind, he thinks national parks are racist. I mean, have you ever been to Old Faithful? What is racist about Old Faithful? He absolutely agrees with all of these disastrous policies that are causing so much pain for Wisconsinites. He agrees with all those things. He is for defunding the police. He is for abolishing ICE. He saw somebody with a T-shirt, liked it, had him send it to him, got a big picture of him, smile on his face, abolish ICE, but he said, I don't want to abolish ICE. Yes, you do. Be honest with Wisconsin. He's taken a page out of the Biden playbook. He's in hiding. Maybe not in his basement, but he's not taking questions from the media. He's not telling Wisconsin what his true views and beliefs are on the issues. The media ought to be calling him out on that. Are they? Are you seeing on the newscast here, when is Mark Mandela Barnes going to come out of hiding and tell Wisconsin what he believes? Where are we hearing that? The fact of the matter is we're not. It's not a level playing field, which is why we need to rely on you. So let me just give you some tips on how I want you to approach the next, 59 days now? Are we under 60? I really ought to be keeping track of this. I know my wife is. I mean, she's got it. I didn't check her calendar. First of all, don't discount anybody. Now, it's true their leaders don't particularly love this country, but I think the vast majority of Wisconsinites, Democrats, Independents, Republicans do. I really do. So I want you to think that too. You see public opinion polls, 75 to 80% of Americans think we're on the wrong track. Those are the people that are thinking about things, okay? Have their eyes open, because we are on the wrong track. So here's the attitude I want you to take into your campaigning. to your door knocking, to your talking to your friends, your family, and neighbors. If you are talking to somebody who loves this country, who's concerned about its future, ask them to join us to heal and unify and save this nation. Okay? Because the other side won't do it. They will continue to divide. There's no wound that they won't pick the scab off to create a wedge issue. It's going to be up to us. I do not want to be like them. Again, the beauty is all I have to do is tell the truth about me, about what I've accomplished, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished as a U.S. Senator, and tell the truth about who Mandela Barnes is and what his beliefs are. That's a powerful weapon, but we have to get that truth out. So I need a bunch of evangelists for the truth in this audience, and I need you to evangelize other people to get out there and tell the truth, because the big difference between the parties is they love government. They love the control. They love the power. As Obama said, you didn't build it. Yes, we did build that. Not big government. We know what made America great. People like you, right? People like you that get up every day, you go to work, you contribute. All work has value. There's not a first or second class way of realizing your full human potential. It's not just graduate students who just had their student loans paid off, okay? It's the working men and women of Wisconsin and America that made this country great. We know that. And the other thing we know is they use that one essential ingredient. What more than 1 million of our fellow citizens, the finest among us, fought and died defending. What the left apparently doesn't care anything about, but we care about it deeply. It's called freedom. And all of us use that freedom every day as we dream, as we aspire, as we build, and as we create this marvel. And it is a marvel that we call America. It is our solemn duty to make sure it not only survives for future generations, but that it thrives. That is what we have to do. On the ballot, in my race, it's truth versus lies and distortion. But what is truly on the ballot, and it has always been on the ballot since our founding, what is really at stake is freedom. And let me end with the rallying cry I first uttered on the Capitol steps on tax day of 2010. This, by the way, was the day when, I don't know if Tommy Thompson is going to be speaking today or not, but I was on that podium when he was there, and you had 8,000 to 10,000 people shouting, "Run, Tommy, run," including my wife. She was probably shouting it the loudest, okay? But here's how I ended my short little speech that day. This is a fight for freedom. It's not somebody else's fight. This is our fight. And it is a fight that we absolutely must win. God bless all of you. God bless Wisconsin. God bless America.
Let's hear it for Ron Johnson, everybody. But we have to do our job to make sure he can do that, right? All of us have to do our job to make sure he can do that. Now, little historical fact for you. There has been a La Follette in office in Wisconsin in 3 different centuries. Doug La Follette was 2 of the centuries alone. So somebody, I'll have people ask me, well, why has the legislature taken a lot of the responsibilities away from the Secretary of State's office? And notice when the Democrats had the legislature, they didn't give the responsibilities back, did they? And I say, they didn't take them away from the Secretary of State's office. They took them away from Doug LaFollette. And that's why we have to have a change there in a guy who has been at the Capitol for decades now. Decades. And we had good candidates step up for this office, and we have a great, great candidate for Secretary of State this year, someone who has an impressive track record in the state legislature, who's got a ton of energy, is doing multiple events around the state this day, but wanted to be here today. We have an opportunity now in the Secretary of State's race, not to elect somebody with a historic name, but to elect someone who will make history. Please welcome Amy Loudenbeck.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks everyone for being here today. I'm Amy Loudenbeck, and after 12 great years in the Wisconsin State Assembly, someone else can have that opportunity. And I'm excited to be taking on a new challenge because we weren't meant to be in these offices forever. Or at least that's what I think. My opponent thinks otherwise. You guys, he has been running for elected office almost as long as I have been alive. And I'm no spring chicken. So this is the year that we have an opportunity. We have a great opportunity to restore purpose and respect to a constitutional office that's directly accountable to the voters. It matters. This office matters. And it matters for a few reasons. The duties are limited, I'll admit it, but you know what? They're important. There are people waiting for documents. Wendy in Brookfield, waiting to adopt her teenage son from Bulgaria. People waiting for their court documents. People waiting for their travel papers, student papers. That's unacceptable. That office needs to be open. The door is traditionally closed, often locked. I want to take this office and make it into something that people can respect. I want to open the door to that office and work with my colleagues in the legislature and talk about what duties are other secretaries of state doing in other states that we could be doing here instead of having them in executive branch agencies or in, for example, the Wisconsin Election Commission, which is appointed and unelected board members and staff. These are reasonable conversations to have. Secretaries of state have a lot of other power elsewhere in the country. Ours has the least amount of power, arguably, amongst all of our states. And I think there's a balance there, and I think that I have the relationship and the ability to look at complex policy issues and find answers that make sense, that follow the true intent of why this office was created in the Constitution. There's a board. It's called the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. It's a constitutional board. It's the oldest state agency in Wisconsin. Has about $1.5 billion in assets and oversees over 70,000 acres of public land. I want to be a $1 billion board member for you. I want to earn the paycheck. I know people all across this country are tired of paying people to not work. Well, I'm tired of paying Doug LaFollette to not work, and you all should be too. And that's what we need to change in November. So we have a great slate of statewide candidates on the ballot this November. You just heard from one of them, Ron Johnson. We must re-elect Ron Johnson in November. And then we have the 5 statewide constitutional offices. And I can tell you, I am so excited about this ticket. Tim Michels and Roger Roth, 2 leaders, 2 veterans, 2 builders, a great legislator, a nice package of leadership and legislative experience that I think is really going to be a working team that will do a lot to advance their good policy ideas. Because after 4 years of Governor Evers, I can tell you the legislature has a lot of good policy ideas that are sitting and waiting to be passed and signed into law by a new governor. We have an attorney general candidate, a prosecutor who is going to defend our law enforcement and defend our state's rights. That's what we need in an attorney general. We don't need someone who is trying to buy into national narratives. And in the case of my office and the office of the state treasurer, John Leiber, I'm going to call him the anchor. He is just a solid guy. 71 out of 72 counties he won. So that means send that guy anywhere. Obviously, people like him when he enters the room. So I'm excited to be part of this 5-candidate team. I think that we've got a great opportunity, and I think we can work together to talk to people like you who are going to help us win in November. So what I'm going to tell you is this. Thank you in advance for all that you've done to support your candidates. And if they didn't win, try to redirect that energy and just focus on the big picture. We have to defeat Tony Evers. We have to push back on this liberal agenda. We have better candidates. We have better ideas. And we have a better ground game. And we can do this if we do it together, and I hope you will join me. So thank you so much.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had a situation? Now, I'm going to introduce him in a few minutes, but there's Tim Michael standing there. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a situation with that guy in the governor's office and the largest majority we could have, Republican majority, in the state assembly? We are at a deadlock right now because we control the Senate and the Assembly, but we got you-know-who, that guy, in the, I see everyone knows his name, in the governor's office. But when that guy gets sworn in January, we need a team to help him, and he'd be the first one to say it. We need a strong team to help him. And from this very area of the state, we are lucky to have one of the strongest Republican members of the state assembly. Please welcome Representative Tony Kurtz.
Well, good morning. This is quite an honor. Could you please give Brian another round of applause? Brian's fantastic. He really is. I'm a little bit intimidated because we do have Tim Michaels in the house. Give him another round of applause. So somebody mentioned the word puppet. So the other day I was at an apple orchard, believe it or not, in my beautiful district, the 50th Assembly District, just a stone throw from here. And a lady looked at me and she goes, "Oh, you're Tony. You're that Democrat." I said, "No, ma'am. My name is Tony Kurtz, and I'm a proud Republican." You know, it's interesting. I go out to my mailbox over the last couple of weeks, and I think you have seen the same thing. You're seeing all this literature from Tony Evers about how he is unifying, how he's done all this great things for the state. Folks, that's the tale of two Tonys. Let me tell you some things that you don't hear about from the folks in the back there. The first two budgets he introduced for our state had tax increases to the tune over $1 billion. He wanted a gas tax. He wanted to index gas to the inflation rate. Now, what has inflation done the last year? Has gone through the roof. That would have added another dime to the price of a gallon of gas, impacting each and every one of you and all our wonderful families across the state. The tale of two Tonys. You're not hearing about that. He talks about how he's bipartisan. Do you know the last time he actually had a meeting with Assembly Republicans and Assembly or Senate Senate Republicans? The last meeting was when it was privately recorded. And he himself did not even know the conversation was recorded. By the way, that's illegal in the state of Wisconsin. That's the last time he's actually brought the leadership of the Republicans in the Assembly and the Senate together. Later today, you are going to be privileged to listen to Governor Tommy Thompson. Guess what Thompson used to do? He used to bring in Republicans and Democrat leaderships to talk about the issues, and that's why he was so successful. And what I'm excited about, that man right there in the back of the room, he's a businessman. He's going to do the same thing for our state. So Tony wanted the tax increases, and we all remember the COVID lockdown. We would still be in lockdown mode if he had his way. It's true. And Eric Toney, who's going to be a fantastic attorney general, teed it up a little while ago when he talked about Kenosha. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenosha burned because of Governor Tony Evers, period. Period. His inaction for 4 days caused that city to burn. And then we have some wonderful law enforcement people here today. If you don't thank them when we're done with this, you need to. Governor Evers throws them under the bus anytime he has a chance. We have to have their back because, by God, they got our back. And why I'm telling you this is because if it wasn't for the strong majorities we have in the Assembly Republicans and the Senate Republicans, we would look just like California or Illinois. Those strong majorities are holding Governor Evers in check. And we have an exciting slate of candidates that we need everybody to get behind. It's interesting because just like you at the grassroots level, during the day in, the day out, the work that has to be done to get us elected, Assembly Republicans, the Senate Republicans, we're doing the same thing you're doing. We're on the ground, knocking on doors. That's our secret. That's our secret to success, is boots on the ground. And I can say that. After 20 years in the Army, we are boots on the ground, just like you. And all the hard work you do day in and day out to keep our strong Republican majorities in the Assembly and the Senate. But folks, I want a Republican governor that I can work with, that's going to work with us to truly make Wisconsin that city on the hill. It can be there. We're within grasp. And that man in the back of the room is who's going to take us there, but we need your help. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for getting behind the Assembly Republicans. Look out in your own area, find that candidate, support him or her, because we want supermajorities, not only in the Assembly, but in the Senate. And once again, I want to work with Tim Michels. So thank you so much for being here. God bless you, and God bless the state of Wisconsin and the United States of America. Thank you.
This guy is going to be the next governor of Wisconsin. He's been a business leader, been a veteran. He knows the value and the commitment of hard work. Joined the U.S. Army, 12 years in the Army, came out as a major, returned here to Wisconsin, and joined with his brothers to grow a family company from a few hundred employees to over 8,000. And he and his wife, Barbara, have raised 3 kids. They know the value of Wisconsin and the importance of what's in front of us. Now, we have a lot of jobs to do, right? Between now and November 8th. Got a lot of jobs to do. Here's one thing I know. I do my job, you do your job, you do your job, you do your job, and next January, Tony Evers will be out of a job. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next governor of the state of Wisconsin, Tim Michels.
All right. Before she gets away too far, I know Brian introduced her. My wife, Barbara, my bride of 26 years. I couldn't do this without her. I know I'm a little biased here. I think she'd make one heck of a great First Lady of Wisconsin. Thank you for being here today. It's Saturday. There's a lot of things you could be doing. You chose to be here because, like Barbara and me, you are concerned about the direction of America. You are concerned about the direction of Wisconsin. You are concerned about the weak leadership that we have right now in this state. That is why we are running. Barbara and I started talking about this back in February. We said, you know what? We can't take it anymore. This country is on a slippery slope towards socialism. Oh, they're being very clever. It's cloaked behind CRT and BLM and defund the police. But we know that George Soros and all these other far-left liberals, what they want to do, they want to tear down the America that you and I know and love. The America where the American dream is still alive. But it's under assault. And we're not going to let it happen. It's a nice elephant, by the way, huh? Gotta be a Kalahari thing, right? It's not the parties, right? All right, I love it. So, the military planner and me, 12 years on active duty, U.S. Army as an airborne ranger, we got our ducks in a row. We planned this thing out. We put together a platinum staff. We got everything ready to roll. And then when we were ready in April, we launched, and it's been a meteoric rise from the very first day. The very first poll that came out had us winning the primary. Every poll after that had us winning the primary. Today, in the polling against Tony Evers, we are in an exact dead heat. I'm going to tell you in a little bit why that's a good idea. But why are we winning, and why are we going to win? Like we just talked about, people are really sick and tired of politics in America. People are really sick and tired of the direction of government. People are ready for change. They're ready for a businessman. They're ready for an outsider. They're ready for a veteran, a non-politician, to come in, take control, do the right things, stand up for family values, stand up for entrepreneurs and businesses, stand up for the hardworking, tax-paying, law-abiding citizens of Wisconsin. And that's what I'm going to do as governor. Thank you. So, the first thing you should do when any candidate says, hey, I'm going to run for office, the number one thing you should say is, what are you going to do when you get in there? If they can't answer that just like that, I would be skeptical. Let me tell you what I'm going to do when I'm sworn in as governor. I have 3 big priorities. 2 of them are legislative, and one of them is really just a cultural leadership thing. One big priority I have, we need to have election integrity in Wisconsin and in the United States of America. I'll tell you, I get really fired up about this issue. When I joined the service, I swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. How many veterans are out there, by the way, took that oath? All right, thank you. How many years were you in? 28. Anybody else? 2 years and 45 days, but who's counting, right? Yeah, when we took that oath, that was not a 12-year oath or a 28-year oath or a 2 years and 45-day oath. That was a lifetime commitment to uphold and defend the Constitution. Why do I get fired up about this? Because this is the United States of America. This is not some third world country, not some banana republic. This is not a Republican issue. This is an American issue. I don't care if you're a Republican, an independent, a Democrat. We should not be having questions 22 months after the last election. Was it rigged? Was it fixed? People have questions, so do I. So what am I going to do as governor? I'm going to work with the legislature. We're going to get those bills right, the bills that Tony Evers vetoed. We're going to stop the Zuckerbucks, out-of-state billionaires, coming into our state and taking control of the election process. Won't happen. We are going to stop the ballot harvesting as well. And we are going to stop the indefinitely confined status, because maybe you had COVID 2 years ago. Now you're going to get a ballot, or in some cases I've heard multiple ballots, mailed to you for the rest of your life. These ballots are sacred. Our voting process, our constitutional process is sacred. We need to get it right, and I give you my oath that we will have election integrity right here in Wisconsin once again. The second legislative issue, boy, I get fired up about this one as well. We are going to reform education in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you. I'll tell you why. I went to public school, K through 12, Lomira, 10 miles south of Fond du Lac. It worked for me, but that was over 40 years ago. Education in Wisconsin continues to decline. It continues to get worse and worse. And I'm going to give you some statistics. But I'll tell you, Tony Evers, if there's one thing in this state that Tony Evers should be doing well, it's education. He spent his entire life in education. He's been a leader in education for the last 15 years. Deputy superintendent, superintendent at the DPI, and now governor. But the test score numbers continue to get worse. If Tony Evers can't make education work well in Wisconsin, how can he make anything work well? I contend that he is not, and we are going to get new leadership in the governor's office. So how are you going to do that, Tim? We're going to do that through universal school choice. We are going to empower parents, and we are going to stop the CRT and get back to the ABCs. Hey, Molly. The parents are going to decide where those tuition dollars go. They are not going to be attached to some building, not be attached to some bureaucracy. They are going to go with parents' sons and daughters to the school of their choice. That will create competition. Competition is the greatest motivator. Competition makes people do better. In our business, if we're not innovating every day, we're losing. If we're not trying to improve every day, we're letting our customers down, and we are going to fall to the wayside. Competition is a great motivator. We're going to empower parents, put them in charge, and then when they show up at the school board meeting, the school board is going to listen to them now. Too many parents go to the school board, they're getting stiff-armed, they're getting the cold shoulder. That has to stop. And I'll tell you, I'm going to share a little story with you. It's a tragic story. This is real, by the way. About 3 weeks ago, we did a piece in the inner city Milwaukee. Baby Kiwan. Baby Kiwan was 5 weeks old when his mother was murdered. Shot 26 times. Killed. Baby Kiwan is being raised by his grandmother right now. The school where baby Kiwan will go, the reading comprehension score at that school is 0. 0. That means that's the entire school. That means not a single kid at that school can read. Reading is the foundation of all learning. Reading is the foundation to learning arithmetic, learning writing. Reading is the foundation to being a productive member of society. Reading is the foundation to being able to get a job. Baby Kiwan and thousands of young boys and young girls just like him, if they have no chance to learn how to read, they are going to end up out on the streets. That's no way to go through life. It leads to crime, violence, unhappiness, more murder, all that stuff. Which brings me to my third priority, reducing crime. There is thousands of laws on the books right now. We need to enforce those laws, and the men and women in law enforcement, they're trying very hard to enforce them laws, but they need to have a governor, a leader who backs the blue and will have their back. That's what I'm going to do as governor. Thank you. Every man and woman in law enforcement is going to know that the governor himself wore a uniform, albeit a military uniform, for 12 years. But they're going to know that I have their back. And they're going to know when they arrest the bad guys that they're not going to be out on the street the next day because these catch and release DAs, I'm going to fire them. How do we get to this spot, by the way, here in the United States of America? Less police is better? Or police are bad? What do I mean by police are bad? Barbara's brother is a cop. He's in law enforcement. Tells me the story. Hey, Tim, you know, I used to go to my backyard neighborhood barbecue. My neighbors would be like, hey, Greg, come on in. Have a beer. Back the blue. Tell us some stories. He said last summer it all changed. He'd go to his backyard neighborhood barbecue. His neighbors would say, hey, Greg, come on in. I'm not so sure I'm supposed to like you anymore. It is a bad cultural flip that happened in America. It has happened because of poor leadership. Joe Biden in Washington, D.C. with his liberal cronies. Tony Evers in Madison with his woke liberal cronies that are saying, you know what? It's not really all their fault. You know, they're a victim of the society that they grew up in. We need to give them a third chance, a fourth chance, a fifth chance, a sixth chance. Look, I'm a good Christian, man. I'm all for giving somebody a second chance. But when you give somebody 5, 6, 7 chances, they're on the street, that means they're repeating those crimes. 90% of the crimes are committed by 10% of the people that are repeat offenders. We need to keep them in jail. We need to keep them locked up. And we do not let them out on bail the next day so they commit a crime. And what do I mean about we need to keep them locked up? Tony Evers is following through on his campaign promise. Yep, he wants to empty the prisons. Do you know that he has done an early parole release on nearly 1,000 convicted criminals here in the state of Wisconsin? Just to put that in perspective, do you know how many Scott Walker let out early? 0. Tony Evers is over 900, headed to 1,000. Of those 1,000, almost 300 are violent murderers. 44 of them are childhood rapists. Why are we letting them out on the streets? What about the victims? What about the hardworking, taxpaying, law-abiding citizens of Wisconsin? Who's standing up for them? I'm going to stand up for them. Yeah. If you're going to do the crime, you better be prepared to do the time. And why are they doing the crime? Because they know they're going to get away with it. Anybody watch the Kia Boys video? That's where they steal one car every hour, 365 days a year in Madison. A journalist went out and he found these guys. You know, they're 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 13-year-olds stealing these cars. He said, why do you do that? They said, because nothing will happen to us. We're going to get away with it. Not come January after I'm sworn in as governor. And the bad guys, are going to know it. They're going to know it, and crime in Wisconsin is going to get back on the trend that it was. Crime has decreased for the last 30 years in the United States until the last 2 years when we had this cultural flip. We're going to get new leadership in Madison. The bad guys are going to know it. The catch and release DAs are going to know it. And we are going to get rule of law back in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you. So, one last priority I have. Those are my 3 big initiatives: election integrity, education reform, crime reduction. But from my first day in office till my very last day in office, whether that's 4 years later or 8 years later or whatever, I am always going to have a priority on jobs and the economy in the state of Wisconsin. I am a businessman. I'm not just some candidate, some politician up here talking about it. I have done it. I have created thousands of jobs. As Brian said, my brothers and I took Michael's. Obama articulated, you didn't build that. I'll tell you what, we did build that. How many business owners out there, by the way? Yeah, thank you. You know what the liberals think? You go into business and you just start making gobs of money. It's just so easy, right? I'm going to be there. I know that you are the driver of the economic engine here in Wisconsin. I'm going to have this economy so robust, so strong. We are going to attract more people to Wisconsin. We are going to have massive reform of the tax code here in Wisconsin. We are going to make Wisconsin more competitive with our neighboring states, more competitive with all states. We're going to attract veterans back here. We're going to attract more young people to stay here. We are going to get this economy cooking on jet fuel from my very first day to my very last day, and we're all going to be proud of the economy here in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you. So one last thing, we had a very spirited primary. All right, it's the way it's supposed to work. If you supported Rebecca, you can be proud of that. She worked very hard. She's very smart, very articulate. I mean, I'd be on the debate stage with her, and I'd be like, man, she's good with the camera. I tell you what. Tim Rantham, great man. Very focused on the issue that he's very passionate about. Love how he started every one of the debates with a quick, short prayer. He had to pay attention, but it was in there. And Kevin Nicholson, Marine, hoorah, and a businessman as well before he got out. We had a great primary. But since day one, Barbara and I have been focused on one thing: replacing Tony Evers. Thank you. It wasn't about winning the primary, and it was always about beating Tony Evers. We won that primary, and I asked for your support. I asked for your help. Together, all of us rowing together, it's very powerful. That's how we're going to win. We are going to get a conservative governor in the governor's mansion, a governor who is pro-life. It comes from my faith. By the way, they're just hammering me on TV on that. Do you see that? And I make no apologies, because Barb and I know that there's no one on the face of the earth that we have to answer to. But someday, we will answer to God, and we will not waver on our pro-life principles. I said I went to Lomira. I actually grew up in a suburb of Lomira, if that's possible. Brownsville, population 342 as a kid growing up. Yeah, I looked out my bedroom window. I shared with my brother. All I saw was dairy farms and cornfields. Helped the farmers there bale hay and pick rocks. And by the way, does everybody know what picking rocks is? Oh, yeah. But I started hunting at a young age. I think it was 12 years old or so. Parents would let me walk out the door with a shotgun by myself. I had my hunter safety training. But I'll tell you what, I've been hunting since I was a young boy. 12 years in the Army as an Army Ranger. I own a lot of guns, and I know how to use them safely. I will protect your Second Amendment rights. And we will stand up for family values, traditional family values as well. We are pro-cop, pro-military, pro-veteran. It's everything that a conservative candidate should be. And in me, it's from how I grew up, who helped raise me, and it comes from my heart. I ask for your help. Together we can win this. The poll that came out 3 days ago, tied 47-47. The poll that came out 2 days before that, tied 48-48. This is great news. This is great news in Wisconsin. 6 years ago, Ron Johnson was down 9 points, and he won. 6 years ago, Donald Trump was down 6 points, and he won. For some reason, they underpoll Republicans. I really believe that we are up 3 or 4 or 5 points right now, but we have to keep working hard. If we all row together, we can and win this thing. We will win this thing. I ask for your support. Talk about it at your kids' school, your grandchildren's school. Talk about it at church. Talk about it at grocery store. Talk about it at work. Talk about this opportunity to get a conservative governor in Madison working with our Republican legislature, our Republican state senate, our Republican assembly. We will do great things. We will transform Wisconsin in a positive way. For generations to come, we will get rid of Tony Evers and make Wisconsin the greatest state that it possibly can be. Thank you so much, and God bless.
How about that guy? You know, it's not for me to do this, but I'm going to anyway. As I said before, you do your job, you do your job, you do your job, you do your job, and Tony Evers will be out of a job, right? And the great thing about that, and this is the part it's not for me to do, but I'll do it anyway, I'm going to give you an invitation. Because if we all do our work and Tony Evers is out of a job, the next time that guy takes an oath will be in the rotunda of the state capitol as governor of the state of Wisconsin. Now, he's right, and the polls are very close, right? I mean, can you think about that a little bit? Here we are 59 days out from the election, and it's already tied. I mean, think about that, because that, like, almost never happens, right? When you have an incumbent four-year governor, that, like, never, ever happens. So this race is going down to the wire, but as I said to someone in Milwaukee yesterday, all these polls are great, and we all we love seeing them when they're close. But as Lee Dreyfus used to say, the only good polls he knew were in South Milwaukee and Stevens Point. All right? So those polls are great to see when they're close, and they're all with him, with Ron, whatever. They might go up, they might go down, they might do that whole thing. And we just got to stay focused. We all just have to stay focused. We stay focused, and not only will he be governor, but we'll have a majority in the state capitol that'll bring us all the things. I was saying to someone the other day, why can't we do more on voter integrity and do this and that? We're not going to win all those fights in the courts. We're not going to protect and expand school choice in the courts. We're not going to try to expand voter ID and voter integrity in the courts. It's not going to happen. I'm just being candid, and I think all of you know this. The way to do it is to re-elect Republican majorities in the Assembly and Senate, and put that guy in the governor's office. That's how it's going to happen. It's that simple. I've run a race for state treasurer, not me running, but I've helped when Kate Zeisky, who many of you know, ran for state treasurer and upset a 20-year incumbent, Charlie Smith. Nobody said she could do it. Low budget campaign, tough to do. Hard race. But this guy who we have running for state treasurer reminds me of that race, because he's working very hard. In a contested primary, but had a good primary win. He's a smart guy. He knows how to talk about state finances and about what the state needs to do in the state treasurer's office, which has been silent for a long, long time. And he will be another person on the Republican team, along with the governor, the lieutenant governor, Roger Roth, our new Secretary of State, Amy Loudenbach. He'll be on the team. We will have a team that you and I will be so proud of at the Capitol. It'll be crazy how proud. It will make that first week in January fantastic, but we got to get there first. And we can with this guy. Please welcome our state treasurer candidate, John Leiber.
Thanks so much for everyone being here. It's great to see such a crowd, and I'm seeing this type of enthusiasm all across the state. Just this Tuesday, after 800 miles, leaving the house at 6 or 7:30 and getting home about 3 a.m., driving all across the state, speaking in front of groups, it's just amazing to see the enthusiasm people have for some real change in Madison. So, as Brian said, my name's John Leiber. I'm running for state treasurer, and usually people say, oh, what does state treasurer do? It's not really a ticket people really look at most of the time. And let's be honest, I don't think any of you have gone into the voting booth and said, I can't wait to vote for that state treasurer candidate. I think the only one who said they were was my mom, but I guess you can understand that. So the biggest job of the state treasurer left is to be on the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. Amy was speaking a bit about that. There's a $1.4 billion trust fund that the treasurer manages. Now, whenever Democrats see a big pile of money, they think, how can we spend that money? And that's not what I want to do. I want to make sure that investment grows because that provides aid to school districts around the state. Now, I want to talk today about something the Democrats have kind of come up with on a way to implement their progressive agenda around the country. Anyone here heard of an investment plan called ESG? Stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance Model. But you may have heard of it from a different name called Go Woke or Go Broke. Basically, the idea is they only want to use money and invest in companies that are sufficiently liberal, sufficiently progressive, and they define that however they want. So if the Democrats get back in power and get on control of this board, they want to make sure the state money, the money in that trust fund's only invested in liberal companies. And I think that's the wrong course to go for a couple of reasons, obviously. First of all, if Democrats want to invest their own personal money in liberal companies, I say, great, go for it. This is America. You can spend your money however you want. You can waste it however you want. It's your own money. But when it comes to public money, that's being held in trust. And we should make sure that we don't just spend it on our own personal preferences or invest in companies that we like. We need to look at what's best for the people of Wisconsin. What's going to get the highest returns? Because the profits from that investment go to schools. So really what the Democrats are saying here is, you know what's more important than our children's education? Making sure we only invest in liberal companies. Making sure they have a little rainbow flag on their Twitter feed. That's more important than giving money to schools. And it's really disappointing, but most important thing I can do as treasurer is to say, no, let's not do that. Because sometimes that's what conservatives really have to do a lot. Say no to these crazy liberal schemes. And that's what I want to do in Madison. Make sure we don't implement whatever liberal policy of the day is. Let's go with conservative policies. Let's go with ideas that actually grow our investment rather than spending it all on whatever, frivolous idea they come up with next. I do want to close with one story from the primary election day. So I'm at home. It's 7 o'clock, an hour before the polls close. And my wife and I, our 19-year-old son comes in the door. I said, "Did you vote today?" And he said, "Oh, is today election day?" And this is somebody who's been out there. He'd helped me collect nomination signatures. He's seen my yard sign out in the yard every single day. He's even gone and helped campaign. But he didn't realize that Tuesday wasn't election day. It was just a Tuesday. And what I want to ask each of you and charge you with on this election day is, even if you have family members who you know are Republican, if you have friends you know are Republican, make sure that you remind them on election day, hey, today's the day you vote. It's not just any other Tuesday, because not everybody is paying attention to politics as much as we are. Not everyone is counting down the days. I have a countdown app on my phone too. It's 58 days to the election, and I'm very aware of that. But I know most people aren't. So it's up to all of us to make sure we vote, but also make sure the people we know are going to vote Republican are reminded to go out and vote that day, because this is going to be a close election no matter which way we go. So I want to thank you all again for coming out here today, and thanks so much for your vote on Election Day. Thank you.
Unlike convention, I'm keeping this one on time. For those of you who are at convention who went through our, what was that, 7-hour roll call or whatever the heck it was. But we wanted to do that today because we have a lot of great people to hear from, right? And a lot of great candidates. As I said of the Assembly and Tony Kurtz, and I spent a lot of time recruiting legislative candidates over the years. And we took over the Assembly for the first time in 24 years. And that's because good people stepped up to run. Now, how many of you have been candidate for anything? Local office, village, so a lot of candidates. And thank you for running. Thank you very much for running, because it's a sacrifice to run. No doubt about it. There's not a lot of glory in running for office, right? So when good folks step up to run for the Assembly or the Senate, I pay particular attention, because that's where it gets done. Any governor, and Tim Michels will tell you that he does need that good team in the Assembly and the Senate. And as large a team as we can have, because sometimes we come across difficult issues. And so you need people of principle who are smart and who are going to work and who know their districts. And that is why we are particularly lucky today to have Robert Ralph with us, because I'm moving around the state a lot, and he is one of the hardest working state Senate candidates in the state of Wisconsin. I really mean that. Please welcome Robert Ralph.
Isn't it great to be a Republican? You know, two major things that we have to do. Two things that we got to do. We got to retire Tony Evers, and we have to make sure that Mandela Barnes does not even have a chance to even get close to Ron Johnson. I got into this because I couldn't sit on the sidelines any longer. I'm proud to be from Wisconsin. I wear the Wisconsin seal on my lapel everywhere I go, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be from Wisconsin, and I'm proud to be a Republican. And I couldn't sit on the sidelines any longer and watch what's happening go down. I'm a former firefighter for 17 years. So I know what it's like when the bell goes off, that you have to answer the call. And you have to answer it now. And you may never know what you get into. Whether it's saving a house, whether it's saving a life, it could be anything. I was the first one off the truck. I was the first one to grab the nozzle. and I was the first one in the House. I'm not a career politician, but the bell rang, and I'm going into the Capitol in November with that attitude, with transparency, accountability, and put some integrity back in our Capitol with Tim Michels. But folks, what we have to do is we have to make sure that we get out and vote. You have to tell your coworkers, your neighbors, your friends, everybody that you know. We have to make sure that we get into office. And I tell you what, with the list of candidates that we have right now, there's no question that it's a down ballot vote for Republicans this year in 22. No question. We've got some great assemblymen running. We've got some great assembly people. We've got some great legislators running. We have everybody in the ticket that is qualified to do the job. I plan on getting in, working hard from day one with Tim Michels. I will be the first one to turn the lights on in the morning and the last one to shut them off at the end of the day. I want to thank you all and Kim Babler for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
It's like going to the county fair and going to the tent where they have all the weird stuff. You know, the bearded lady, the spoon bender, Republicans from Madison. Something like that. And when I say, well, how lucky I am. I mean, just look at the last two members of Congress I've had. Tammy Baldwin and Mark Pocan, who I've debated several or various times over the years. And, but that's a seat we've held. Remember Scott Klug? That's the seat we've held. That's a county board, as my friend Jerry Durr knows, that we elected a Republican county board chairman for 4 years. Now, this wasn't recently, but I have to tell you, one of the things I get out of doing a little radio is that people will listen and they'll, maybe if they don't like the label, the Republican label thing or whatever, but when I go talk at service clubs or events around town, people will come up to me that might not say it publicly and say, keep going. Tell Vicki to keep going. You guys got to keep going. I get it in Milwaukee all the time. In fact, it happened yesterday. And so when people come up and you're on radio, I'll do WISN in Milwaukee, and I have a face for radio. And a voice for print. So when people come up and say, keep going, tell them to keep going, keep going, that's how I knew that Scott Walker was going to win back in Act 10. Remember that? Thousands of people outside the Capitol, protesters, all that. That's how I knew Scott Walker was going to win. Not because of some poll or focus group that I saw, but because I was speaking outstate at an event in a Democrat area, at an event, and got some questions and things like that. Same thing. People who wouldn't raise their hand maybe and ask the question in front of other people in the crowd came up to me after the event and said, tell Scott to keep going, doing the right thing. He's doing the right thing. There's more of them out there than we know, right? There's more of them out there. That's why Trump surprised them and won Wisconsin. There's a lot more people out there than we know. It got to the issue that Tim Michels talked about in the polling. It's not that the pollsters are bad. It's just that a lot of our folks maybe are a little less inclined to say where they're at. And that's why the people at the State Democratic Party and Evers headquarters are really nervous right now, because that silent majority's out there. And they're not happy with high taxes. They're not happy with violent crime on the streets of Milwaukee. They're not happy that people drive cars through Waukesha parade routes and kill people when they're out earlier than they should be. Don't let the diversionary tactics of this White House. Did anyone hear the president last week? Disgraceful. It was disgraceful. And the whole strategy is to divert attention away from the sorry record of this administration. If people in the Dells and Lake Delton and Portage and Milwaukee and everything, if they focus on their actual record, the Democrats are going to lose everything. Everything. If the question is about 8.5% inflation or gas prices that are still well over $1 than they were, the DNC, Democratic National Committee, actually put out a tweet last week bragging about how much gas prices had dropped. Seriously. So if they can divert people's attention away from gas prices and inflation, grocery prices, anyone notice that? Every time we talk about the stat on how much grocery prices are, every single time we talk about this on the air, I'll have people texting me in the studio going, oh, it's way more than that. It's way more than whatever percentage the government puts out. They have to divert everyone's attention from how sorry their record is in D.C. and in Madison. That's it. That's what they have to do. If people think about their daily life and everything they've been through, closed businesses, right? Inflation, taxes, a weak national defense, a multi-trillion-dollar war, a southern border that has had 3 million attempted crossings. 3 million, a record. The last time I read a history book and read something about 3 million people going over the border, it was called an invasion. It was in Europe and it was called an invasion. So let's make sure that our neighbors and friends understand what this is about. It's not about the Democrats' diversions. It's about what's affecting us in our daily lives. We let the White House and the Democratic National Committee divert, and Mandela Barnes doing the whole baseball thing and everything else. Mandela Barnes is the most radical leftist ever to be on the ballot in this state. Ever. In this state. Have no doubt about it. If people understand the differences between Mandela Barnes and Ron Johnson wins walking away. Seriously. But $65 million in negatives, which it was a couple of years ago, that's what they were running presidential campaigns on, $65 million. And the reason I wanted to mention that before I bring Eric Olson out is that that's a challenge in front of us. Not to make up campaign slogans, but just to tell the truth. We tell the truth, people recognize the truth, and vote on the truth, and you know what? The Democrats are done. They're done. So we had a great congressional primary here in the 2nd District. Terrific. 2 terrific candidates. I mean, I was pinching myself because we had 2 terrific candidates to run for Congress. And Charity Berry, who's here today. Where is she? Say hi to Charity Berry. And this guy who won this very close primary in this race where he can help crystallize the differences between ourselves and the Democrats and what's going on in the House of Representatives. Please welcome congressional candidate Eric Olson.
All right. Can everyone hear okay? All right. Hey, it's wonderful to be here. It's really wonderful to be here. It's always incredible to be in a room full of people who think the same way and see things the same way and hold the same values and are passionate about those values and are ready to do something to make sure that those values and our great country persist for a long time into the future. So a while ago, I was on the Vicki McKenna show. I don't know, some of you maybe heard it. Some of you like Vicki McKenna. Amazing woman. And I said at that time, September 9th, I'm getting married. Sarah and I are getting married. And we actually didn't get married on September 9th. We got married at 12:01 a.m. on September 10th, today. And my now parents-in-law, Alan and Lori Clapp, are here, and Sarah's here. Why don't you just stand up for a sec? I'm going to embarrass you. Go ahead, go ahead. And it was a very small, we just went out to dinner together because obviously with the campaign going on, there wasn't the time or the opportunity. At a later date, we're going to have a large, beautiful wedding where we're probably going to go broke spending all the money on everything, but that's okay. And we're going to do that, but we couldn't do it. But we had a very special evening last night, and we said our vows to each other, and now we're married. So I can stand here in front of you today saying that I feel like the luckiest man alive. But it's not because, really, of being married to Sarah, who's a wonderful woman and perfect in every way. It's because I was born in the United States of America. And it's because this country is the greatest country that has ever existed in the history of the world. And it's because our Constitution, the Constitution of the United States of America, is the most perfect and enduring and blessed document in terms of government to ever exist in the history of the world. And I can guarantee you that when those men who sat down together and framed our United States Constitution were doing that blessed work, that the Creator was there in that room with them, guiding their hand and making sure that every word they wrote was perfect. So by that standard, all of you are also the luckiest men, women, the luckiest people alive, because you are also Americans, and you also live in this great country. And so when we think about that, we realize that in this country, the reason, probably the fundamental thing that has separated us from every other previous country, every other experiment in government, is because the sovereign in this country is we the people. And we the people are the ruler, but we the people have to be vigilant, and we have to insist that the government works for us, not the other way around, that they are supposed to do their job, and they have to do it, quite frankly, a little bit better. Because when we look around right now, this country is a mess. It's a mess. And it starts from the bottom up. When we look at the different neighborhoods throughout our state and throughout our country, I'm running for Congress, so that's a federal position, but nevertheless, the responsibility is there. We have to make sure that every neighborhood throughout this country is safe. How sad is that there can be a neighborhood where a little boy or a little girl coming home from school is unsafe, and that child's parents may have to worry, are they going to get home safely from the bus to the house? And maybe it's a single parent working hard, trying to play by the rules, trying to get ahead by working extra, and they have to be possibly at work worrying, is the little love of my life, is that little person going to just be safe walking home? That is so sad. And that's the reason I was so happy to hear from our next governor, Tim Michels, that one of the things that he's going to prioritize is the areas that are in the greatest need of attention. He came to Dane County a couple days ago, and he said, for far too long, Republicans have talked about places like Milwaukee, where quite frankly, we lack basic public safety. He said, for far too long, we've talked about places like that as the problem. And he said, no, these places have a problem. They have a problem, but they can be fixed. There is absolutely no reason that in a country as great as ours that we should have neighborhoods that are unsafe. Every place should be safe. That doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to be rich. Maybe people are at different places. Maybe people are my father's parents didn't have a lot of money, but nevertheless, they had a lot of morals and a lot of honesty, and they could grow up in a place that was safe. Same thing with my mother. What has gone wrong that we no longer have basic safety? And Tim Michels is going to change that in this state. He's going to make sure that the police are supported. We have to support the police. The police largely know what is causing the trouble, but we have to give them funding. We should not be defunding the police. We should be giving them a raise. Yeah, we should be giving them a raise. And we shouldn't, yeah. Hey, please clap for that, because these are men and women who put their lives on the line to guarantee that we can sleep at night without worry. We have to give them the training that they need. Instead of being critical, we should say, what can we do to make sure that our men and women of law enforcement are trained even better? Because we can always hold ourselves to a higher standard. That was one thing that my father constantly taught me. It was difficult growing up as his son, but I love the man for it, because nothing was ever quite good enough. And he would always say, you can do better. We can do better. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We have to improve it so that we have not just a great law enforcement, but we have the best law enforcement in the history of the world, that we have the safest neighborhoods in the history of the world. And then what we're going to start to see is that a lot of the decay that we see starts melting away. Who's going to steal cars when they grow up in a safe place with good morals and good support, learning that when they play by the rules, they're going to flourish, and when they step outside the lines and break the rules, there's going to be a consequence? Because that's another thing my father taught me. Everything that we do, think, and say always has a consequence. So the next point that I want to make is education, because we go from the bottom up. And when we start with safety, the next thing after that that we have to focus on is making sure that we all have the basis, that we all have the ability to participate in this great country as full citizens. And in order to exercise the full responsibility of being a citizen, we have to be educated. We have to teach people how to learn things and how to evaluate information so they can make their own choices. And when we look at our schools right now, that's not what's happening. When I was a child, we had desks and notebooks and pens and pencils. And we had textbooks that we would sign our name in and write the date that we got it, and you could see a long list of people in that textbook who had it before you. And you had to give it back in pretty good condition, or your parents might be getting a phone call. It never happened to me, so I don't know. But you know, I did a lot of things that maybe weren't perfect, but that wasn't one of them. So I always give my textbook back, and I learned, and I don't think that we wasted the tremendous amount of money on it. And I say waste because education is priceless. There is really no price too high for making sure that every child in this country is taught not what to think, but how to think. And not what to believe, but how to form a strong conviction about what is true and what is not true, and what is right and what is wrong. That's priceless. But right now what's happening far too often is that in this state, but in many other places across the world, where education has gone astray. It's lost. We're spending enormous amounts of money on students, sometimes $14,000 or $15,000 per student per year, which would be fine, except that many of them don't read at grade level, some let alone at all, and many of them can't do the basic things that you need to do to be a citizen. So we need to fix education, and the way that we do that at the federal level is actually we back off. The federal government should not be telling states and should not be telling school districts how to run their education. The federal government, if it's going to be doing anything at all, should be providing money to states and to localities for education with no strings attached. And there is in fact an argument that it shouldn't even be doing that, because the reality is they're not giving us anything. That's our money that we gave to them, and then they act like they're the big people up there for giving our own do come from the divine. But our rights are guaranteed by the strength of our arms and the strength of our men and women in uniform. And so we also owe it to those men and women in uniform, and when I would get to Congress, one of the first things that I would do is put a bill out there called the Gratitude Bill. Gratitude to our men and women in uniform, and ensuring that they get a raise in their pay as well, because it's abominable. It's unconscionable when we look at the amount of money that they're being paid to take the oath and to know that they may get a phone call that they have to go away to a faraway place and perhaps lay down their lives and never see their families again, only to see that their pay and their money has been eroded by inflation. I don't think it's even really kept up. But even that alone, this is the most important work. These men and women who sign up to sacrifice in that way deserve to be paid fairly and deserve to be rewarded and deserve to be honored. And lastly, I'm going to say something. We should be grateful. We should be grateful to all the people who came before us in this country, all the people who sailed on those ships off to Europe to fight in World War II, the people who went to Korea, the people who went to Vietnam, the soldiers who have died in countless foreign places, not even always knowing exactly what the objective was, but always faithful to that oath that they took. And so we have to have gratitude for them. We have to have gratitude for everybody who has taken on the heavy burden of serving in public office. I've had the great pleasure of working as an attorney for the last 17 years, and we do land rights law. and I actually have said this as a little bit of a joke sometimes. I've said I have really absolutely no experience in government, but I have more experience fighting government than anybody else in this whole room. And that's the truth. And so we do fight government, but we also have to realize that we have to have gratitude to the people that serve, because it's a thankless job. You can't always keep everybody happy. But I think that everybody who serves, we've heard from some great ones here today. We've heard from Tim Michels, who's going to be our next governor. We've heard from Senator Ron Johnson, a great man who had the courage to speak the truth about certain things when it was a very unpopular time to do it. I see you all nodding. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. People say right now, you know, there's $43 million of negative advertising against the man. $43 million. Look at yourself in the mirror and think to yourself, what would happen if $43 million of negativity came at me? It wouldn't be a pretty thing. But he had the courage to do what was necessary to raise important issues at a time when it was basically prohibited to talk about those issues. And now many of them are in the mainstream. And there is one last person I'm going to thank, and that's Donald J. Trump. Some people love the man. Some people maybe don't completely love the man. But nevertheless, he did some amazing, important things. And he did some things that if our media had been honest, they would have thanked him for it and they would have praised him for it. And I'm just going to talk about one, which is interesting. How many of you know what the Abraham Accords are? How many of you have been to Israel? A few, okay. Israel is an amazing country because I've traveled around the world. In Israel, there is freedom. There is. You get the very strong impression that you could basically say anything, practice any religion that you want to without any fear of reprisal in that country. And that's actually, believe it or not, a rare thing around the world. We look at other countries, China being one of them, and we see that it is not free. It is brutal repression of Christians, of the Uyghurs, of so many people. Israel is free. You can do what you want there. But that is a warring part of the world. That part of the world has been in strife for a long time. Many of our men and women in uniform have lost limbs and lives and sanity there. And so the Abraham Accords were the beginning of a very important beginning of peace in the Middle East. The Abraham Accords normalized political relations between Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco. And interestingly, I don't actually remember which one of the people involved it was. They said, in order to achieve this amazing accomplishment, what we did is we simply looked at what everybody else had been doing, and we did the opposite. Well, and it's kind of true, because a lot of times we see government butting its head up against the same things, spending more and more money, and never learning from the mistakes or lessons of the past. So that was an amazing accomplishment. And he earned almost no praise for it. We see in various, even many different people, many different newspapers have all said what an amazing accomplishment this was, because in an area that was so characterized by strife and war, we see the beginnings of peace flowering. And I'll tell you something, if President Obama had done the Abraham Accords, he would have had a back problem. He would have had a back problem. You probably don't know what I'm talking about. He would have had a back problem because they would have put so many metals around his neck that it would have started to cause a small amount of pain in his lower back from the weight dragging down. But when President Trump did it, it barely got in the news, and he barely got a thank you. So let's all say today, thank you, Donald J. Trump. Whatever anybody may say about anything else that the man did, thank you for that. And another amazing thing that he did was called the First Step Act. Because we talk about crime and we talk about our police. But I'll tell you something that's a shame in this country and something that has to stop, and that is the sorry state of our jails and prisons. When the jails and prisons, folks, that's the government. So when somebody has done something wrong and the government takes away their liberty and puts them in that place for punishment, and really it's just punishment because we don't see a lot of rehabilitation. It's supposed to be rehabilitation. What Donald Trump did with huge bipartisan support is he passed something called the First Step Act, which meant that if men and women who had made a mistake and gone to prison were willing to start working and start taking the appropriate steps to do programs and learn things and improve themselves to help ensure that they would not go back in the future to making more mistakes, then they could earn some time off their sentence. And many thousands of people, perhaps certainly over 3,000, but now perhaps as much as 7,000, have taken this opportunity seriously and put in the work and improved themselves and gotten out sooner and have come back as productive members of society. And again, if that was something that a Democrat had done, we would hear no end of it. We would hear no end of the praises. But you hardly hear about it. It's hardly in the newspapers. And so that brings me to the last thing that I want to thank Donald J. Trump for, and that's a thing from my own personal perspective, is revealing to me how biased and unfair our news media is. The balls and strikes are different depending on which party you belong to, and that's just the fact, I'm sorry to say. And it has to stop. And I go around, I've met so many people doing this work, going to different doors, the doors of people saying, please consider voting for me. We have this little beautiful literature that we printed up with this symbol on it, liberty, because that's what our campaign is all about. And so many of them have said, I like what you're saying, but how are we ever really going to fix anything when the news media is so badly broken? And it really is. It really is. And I'm not saying just on one side. The news media is broken. It's more along the lines of opinion or advocacy than news. News should tell us the facts. And that, quite frankly, is how it used to be. The news should report the facts. And then it should be left up to us and our beautifully well-educated children sitting in their safe neighborhoods to decide what they think of it. And until we get back to that, we are really in a situation where, quite frankly, in order to have any hope of understanding what's actually going on, a person actually has to take it upon themselves to try to scan 7 or 8 or 9 news sources, all of which are lying to us in different ways, and then trying to triangulate between them what the truth might possibly be. That's how I read the news. And it's a time-consuming thing. That's why I haven't gotten a lot of sleep for years. My eyes are getting tired from trying to figure out what's going on. No one will tell us what's going on. We have our great friends and supporters here. So we have to do that. And quite frankly, I don't think that's something that the government can do. I really don't. I think that that's something that we all have to individually do, because when we demand something, when we demand a product or a service, someone in a market-based economy like ours is, someone will step into that place and start doing it. And then if everybody is watching, very few people watch CNN anymore. I don't know if you knew this, but their viewership, which is a good thing. And we need a news source to come into being that basically just reports what's going on, and then we all have to start watching it. I mean, this is a wish, but it's something that if we start thinking about it, we can start doing it. So obviously that is not something that we would pass with legislation or anything like that, but a political office, really when one thinks about it, it's more than just making laws. And in fact, there's a very strong argument that I'm very familiar with, having practiced law for 17 years, that we have far too many laws. We could do with an awful lot less of them. So there's the job of trying to pass laws, there's possibly the job of repealing laws, but there's also the job of leading by example. So when elected to United States Congress, I promise to do a couple things. I promise to support always faith. I promise at every turn to be a consistent vote for smaller government. I promise to support and uphold the Constitution of the United States of America without compromise. And lastly, I promise to do it in a joyful way, all of us together fighting for these great ideals. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time and your support.
So I'll mention two things. Number one, Derek Van Orden, unable to be with us today, had a family thing come up, so a serious family issue, so he was unable to be here today, as was Roger Roth, who is running around the countryside like the rest of them. So we miss both of those people being able to be here with us today. You couldn't make this guy up in a good way. Now, like 20 years ago, I was advancing an event for a candidate up in Oshkosh, and the legislator who introduced our final speaker today said, of all the governors that we had in the 20th century, there were two great ones, one at the start and one at the end. Fighting Bob La Follette at the start and Tommy Thompson at the end of that century. You think about it, school choice, right? Think about what happened. School choice, welfare reform, holding taxes in the line. It wasn't something that just got noticed in Wisconsin. Remember? Got noticed across the country and across the world. We would not have had school choice and welfare reform if it wasn't for this guy. It wouldn't have happened. The whole world's eyes were on Wisconsin, literally people coming in from around the world to see that the work that this guy started. Now remember when he was in the assembly, he was supposed to be Dr. No. Well, he taught the Democrats a lesson, didn't he? The most innovative governor we have ever had. On issue after issue after issue, America and the world watched what was happening by Tommy Thompson. And I say that because, and then he went on to do some small jobs, Secretary of Health and Human Services, University of Wisconsin president, all sorts of boards and commissions. At the end of being governor, the easiest thing he could have done was to walk away and say, I have done what I came to do. But that isn't Tommy Thompson, is it? It's just not. To this day, an innovator, a reformer, a leader. Someone who at times like this, a builder, right, an innovator, someone at times like this, when everything is on the line, U.S. Senate seat, control of the U.S. Senate on the line. The governor's office on the line. The majority in the legislature, winning the House of Representatives on the line. Everything's on the line. And when everything is on the line, who do we look to? We look to Tommy Thompson. Every single time. We look to Tommy Thompson because he's a uniter and he's a builder and he knows how to lead. And that's why we have him here today. Please join me in welcoming Governor Tommy Thompson.
Oh, God, I love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me just start out very simply by saying thank you. Thank you for all the years of supporting me. Thank you for all the years of your hard work. And thank each of you for making Wisconsin and this country better. And that is what I want to talk about. First off, I want to say a few words about Brian Schimming. He goes all over this state and is the master of ceremony. He's getting better. I thought the speech was pretty good. And a lot of you probably like him, don't you? Yeah, he's likable. But I knew him back when he was one of the most sarcastic, incorrigible young persons I have ever met. He was a waiter at Amato's at the age of 13. And we from the legislature would go down there to have dinner. Little Brian ran the place at age 13. I went in and I said, can we have dinner? And he says, no. Can we have a cup of coffee? And he says, no. I said, why not? He says, I am done working for the day. And I said, you're not the cook. You're not the owner. He says, I run this place. And if you can't get here before 9 o'clock, it's 5 after 9, we're not serving you. Brian Schimming, I still remember the night you told me that. And I've never forgotten what an incorrigible, sarcastic young man you are. We have been friends for a lifetime, Brian and I. He worked for me. A great guy. And I think the world of him. Just like I do your wonderful 2nd District Chairman. Kim, you've done an outstanding job, always there for the Republican cause, worked for me in my administrations. You and Brian did an outstanding job. And I want to say thank you to both you and Brian. And the county chairman, would you please stand? They don't get enough recognition. And I really want to say, thank you. Because they spend, they're overpaid. But they put in so much time, so much work, and make us all proud to be Republicans. And then there's my good friend, the chairman of the Towns Association. Stand up. This man has been a Republican, been a town chairman, a farmer, 75 years the Towns Association have been in existence. They're celebrating their 75th year, and they're just doing a wonderful job of representing the people. And they're at the heart of our democracy. They're at the heart of our democracy. That's where if your road is not plowed, you need sand, you need gravel, you need your driveways cleaned. It's the town chairman and the Towns Association that does that. And I want to thank you for all your years of service, but above all, I want to thank you for being my friend. And then there was a wonderful woman who passed away this year, who was a 2nd District chairperson, lived, breathed the Republican cause, and when I started in politics, we had no Republicans at all. We were a big purple-blue state. But Mary Mose and Fred Mose have always been there. And members of you, Mary, thank you for all that you've done to build this party, and I really mean that. And then the candidates. Tim Michaels, talked about him a little bit later, Ron Johnson, Eric Toney, Amy Lautenbach, Tony Kurtz, my state legislator, Eric Olson, who you heard from, what a great young man. And he had a wonderful, and then there are some people that ran in the primary and didn't win, but they're here supporting the cause. Charity, and I thank her. And all those candidates who worked their hearts out for the Republican Party, thank you. So today's a day of thanks and remembrance, but also a time, ladies and gentlemen, for us to look ahead. We've got 60 days. And I want to go over, and I'd like to have some feedback from you. We are at the precipice. This could be the most important election that any of us have ever been involved in. And that comes hard for me to say because I always thought my elections were the most important. But this election is one of demarcation. This is an election, ladies and gentlemen. Are we going to continue to go down the road of creeping socialism? Or are we finally going to put a stake in the ground and make this the demarcation line and say we are going to have a change of direction in this country and state for the cause of freedom, liberty, democracy, and independence for our individual selves? I never thought we could slip so fast. Biden hasn't even been in office 2 years. And let's just take a look. And you know something about the Democrats? They're smart. They're dedicated to their cause. Right now, they don't care what they said yesterday. They only care right now is to win the election. And as soon as the election's over, ladies and gentlemen, way veer way to the left. Way to the left. Let's just go through what's going on in the country and the world. Let's talk about inflation. Can you imagine our country, a president with inflation at higher than 8%, the highest in 40 years, in less than 2 years? Just think of that. A loaf of bread, a pound of hamburger, a gallon of gas, And then in order to satisfy the needs of the country, not the needs of the country, the needs of his political party, they sell off our supplies of fuel, which we have for security, to try and drive down the price. Instead of opening up and allowing us, as Americans, to become independent from the Arab countries and be able to independently become the energy producer of the world, the free world, and be able to drive that, he has changed that in less than 2 years. And in order to satisfy the increase of $5 a gallon, he's selling off our security of energy. And that is the Democrat philosophy. The next thing, let's make darn sure that we pull out of Afghanistan, the worst defeat America has ever had. And the people that have supported us year after year in Afghanistan, we left them to die. Women and girls, and I've been to Afghanistan 5 times, they want the same thing as women do all over the world. They want a better future for themselves and their families, and they want to go to school. And Biden and the Democrats turned their back on them. Young girls cannot go to school in Afghanistan anymore. And then, ladies and gentlemen, security. Do you think anybody is afraid anymore of what's going on in the world? Afraid of America like they should be? This is our future, ladies and gentlemen. And this is why this election teeters on whether or not we're going to continually go to the left, creeping socialism, or we're going to bring it back to the center and start looking to the future and being individuals that believe in independence, believe in democracy, and believe in the republic, and believe that we can do better for all of Americans. Education. What has been the biggest disaster for education of our young people in America today? Closing down our schools. Young men and women, boys and girls, need to be in school and need to be taught. And the Democrat philosophy closed down the schools because the teachers union asked them to. It's all about the Democrats getting elected and re-elected. Not what's good for education, not what's good for security, not what's good for the democracy, but what is good for them to get re-elected. And then, oh yes, let's defund the police. Let's defund the police and take money away from the police and blame them for everything that goes wrong. And now, they find that's not popular. So in the last 6 weeks, now they want to fund the police. How long do you think that will last? The day after the election, they're going to be right out there, defund the police again. And what's wrong with America believing this crap? They are not going to change, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why this election is so critical. And that's why the United States Senate is on the line. Are we going to have Republicans and start taking back and getting more freedoms, get us energy independent, open up our schools, drive down inflation, creating jobs and opportunity? I think it's time for us to fight. And to bring that back and make sure we win. Now I want to ask you something. You know, I saw this ad on television for Mandela bars. Isn't it amazing? Just help me out here. Am I missing something? He puts on an ad to thank his mother and father for working so hard. But he never says anything about him working hard. Never says anything about him not having a job. Can you imagine a Republican putting on and say, oh, mother and dad worked really hard. Here they are. They work in the factory the third shift. Well, what did you do? Oh, I demonstrated. Can you imagine that? And all of a sudden, he wants to open up the borders, defund the police, and now, 60 days before the election, what is happening? He wants to fund the police. He wants to create opportunity for jobs. I mean, what is wrong with the press pointing this out? It's there, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why we have to win. We have to win, ladies and gentlemen. Consider it. And we're 5 votes away from taking over the House. Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if we could take back control of the United States Senate, the House of Representatives? We could start changing the direction of America, and instead of going to creeping socialism, independence and freedom and democracy for all the people, and bringing back the Republican Party and the right to work, the right to opportunity to live, the right to be able to do what is necessary to make things happen. That is the Republican Party and the philosophy of free enterprise. And then we have Eric Olson, we need you in Congress. Derek, the 3rd District, we could take control of our destiny, ladies and gentlemen, in this room. And that's why 60 days are so important, and that's why the next 60 days are so important, to be able to get people rallied around our cause for freedom and for justice and opportunity. Fund the police, open up the schools, create jobs, become energy independent. What is wrong with that, ladies and gentlemen? That is a recipe. That is a recipe for success and for the future of America. Instead of defund the police, close the schools, increase inflation, drive up the price of gasoline, and sell off our supplies, our energy. That, to me, is the Democrat way of life, and they're not going to change it. They want us to become a socialistic country. Believe it or not, that's the direction they're going to go, ladies and gentlemen. They want to control health care, they want to control education, they want to control energy, and they want to tell us what we can do, what we can't do, and what we should pay for anything we want to buy. To me, I'm going to fight that tooth and nail. I'm here today because I want to be able to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this election is so important. We have to win. We have to change the direction of this country. And so, you've been here a long day. We got 60 days. It's close. Wisconsin is a 50-50 state. 47-47, really. And so we're at 47-47. 48, 46, 47, 47. We're down, ladies and gentlemen, to who is going to get out and vote. Who is going to get their people to the polls? And the Democrats always do a better job than we do. They always do a better job. Scott Walker lost by 20-some thousand votes. Trump lost by about 20,000 votes. That's not many votes in any precinct. We're losing in Madison and Milwaukee. In order to compensate for the loss we're going to take in Madison and Milwaukee, we got to pick it up in Sauk County. I can remember, ladies and gentlemen, when I carried all the counties of the state, including Dane County, including Milwaukee County, and I always carried Sauk County. Always carried Sauk County. We have got to, ladies and gentlemen, in the 2nd Congressional District, we've got great leaders, great leadership, great candidates, great opportunity, but just remember, do we want to defund the police? Yes or no? Do we want to be able to become energy independent like we were 2 years ago and lead the nation? Do we want to keep our schools open and not close them down because it makes it easier for the teachers union? Do we want to be able to become so independent that we, the people, stop making our own decisions and not have big government tell us what we can do or not? That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we got to tell the people. The Democrats are not going to change. They're going to continue right after the election. They're going to go back to defund the police, open up the borders. I haven't even got to the borders. But it's a sin and a shame that we have laws on the book that we do not enforce. And we have an opportunity to change the whole direction of our country and our state. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's great to be a Republican. And I think it's great that we're down to 60 days. And I think it's great that you're all here. And I think it's great that we have it in our control to change the direction of our country, which I'm really worried about, and the direction of our state. And it's up to us. It's up to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, may the road always rise to meet you. And may the wind always be at your back. And may the sun shine warm upon your forehead, and the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. God love you. God love America. God love Wisconsin. Let's just make it better, ladies and gentlemen. And it's up to us to do it. God love all of you. Thank you.
Isn't Tommy Thompson great? You know, so as we close up here, John Fandrich is going to join me, the Vice Chair of the 2nd Congressional District and the Chair of Greene County, who does a fantastic job for Greene County, but also for the 2nd District. To kind of close up, give you a few details. By the way, I wanted to mention, and John was reminding me in back, guess who's coming to Green Bay next weekend for Tim Michaels? Ron DeSantis. So that's pretty exciting, and I know John will talk about this, but one of the things I just want to mention is because of Ron Johnson, because of the governor's race, Wisconsin, you're going to see surrogates coming in, right? It's kind of real typical of a big election year. You're going to see so much activity going on the next couple of weeks. So strap in, people. We got a job to do, but can you imagine election night? The looks on their faces. When Tony Evers is calling the moving truck. And Mandela Barnes can go back to protesting full time. Brady Please welcome the Vice Chair of the 2nd District, John Pandridge.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for sticking around today. As Brian said, I am the chairman for Greene County. I'm the vice chair for the 2nd Congressional, and it's my honor to speak with you today. When I asked Kim Babler, I said, Kim, so you want me to close? Who am I going to follow? Who's the last speaker? And he said, oh, you know, Tommy Thompson. I said, oh, I thought maybe it'd be, you know, Ronald Reagan or something, for Christ's sake. How am I supposed to follow that? And he goes, you'll be just fine. I'm like, sure. But that's what it's like following Tommy Thompson. He walked in, he had the sling on his arm. I don't know if you saw that. And I said, Governor, what happened? And he said, oh, I was up at Packer training camp. I said, oh, you're on the sidelines watching? He said, no, I'm out there running the football. How else do you think it happened? I said, thanks a lot, Governor. Way to be in the fight. But seriously, I do want to thank all of you for coming today. It's been a long day. Thank you for making the trip up to the Dells. I want to thank my fellow county chairman for bringing the folks they did today. Dave Serters here from Lafayette County made that trip all the way up from Shullsburg. David, thank you for coming and making that trip today. Mr. Kim Babler, who's in the back. Kim, I want to say thank you for putting this event on today. This was your vision. Thank you for doing this. But I also want to thank our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Brian Shimming. He is fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think of Brian? So as Kim and I talked, we both believe in building momentum heading into November and completely agree that we have to carry Southwest Wisconsin. In 2018, after Governor Walker lost, I called his campaign manager, Joe Fadness, and I said, Joe, we lost every county west of Jefferson to the Mississippi. I am going to take over Greene County. I am going to help the 2nd Congressional, and by God, in 2022, we are going to take back Southwest Wisconsin. But the call to action is now, ladies and gentlemen. As Governor Thompson mentioned and the other candidates have mentioned today, we have 60 days, and we can't wait till October to get this done. We need to get this done now. You know, my father was a World War II vet. He signed up at the age of 17. He lied about his age to get in the beginning of 1945. And I asked him when I was growing up, I said, why would someone who is only 17 be willing to sacrifice his whole future and his whole life at such a young age? He said, living in the United States, son, is a privilege, not a right. And that privilege needs to be defended and protected every single day. Those words still stick with me as he has passed on. But the best advice he also gave me is that those who watch a crime being committed and do nothing about it are just as guilty as those who committed the crime. Today, we have crimes committed against this country every single day. And what are we doing about it? Crimes against freedom, crimes against the unborn, and against our way of life. Are we just as guilty for not doing anything, ladies and gentlemen? Or are we going to step up and be counted? I hope by attending this rally today, you have made your decision to be stepped up and be counted. But I want you to take that back to your counties, because I need 3 or 4 more of you, your friends, your family, to get to the polls in 60 days so we can take back Southwest Wisconsin. Thank you for coming today, and thank you so much for supporting Southwest Wisconsin and the 2nd Congressional. God bless you, and thank you so much.